Hello and welcome to Tech Deals. I'm Tech and this is
Rogue.
In April of 2019, we did a build guide featuring a Ryzen 5 2600, a GTX 1660 Ti, an MSI X470 Gaming Plus motherboard, and this lovely Cooler Master MB500 mid-tower case. Since that time, it has gone through many changes. Ending up today, the proud owner of a Ryzen 9 3900X, 32 gigabytes of RAM, an RTX 2080, and a Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo. Why? That's what today's video is all about.
Today's video is brought to you by BackBlaze, the leader in online backup services. Get a free 2-week trial with no credit card required using our link in the video description below. More details after the video.
This computer has been Rogue's office machine for a while now, but before we go any further, those of you who watch our live streams, you know her very well. But for those of you who don't watch them, let's have her introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm Rogue and I'm Tech's wife. Hang on a minute, you're Rogue's husband. Best friend and business partner in that order. Many of you probably have figured out Tech isn't his real name, it's just what we call him at the office. Actually, come to think of it, we do call him that all the time. Although it does work well with my name, which is why the live streams on Thursday is called the Rogue Tech Show. This has been my work PC for about a year now, with various parts changed out over time as my husband has upgraded it or, to my annoyance, downgraded it. We did have a live stream building my new PC recently with the Ryzen 9 3900X, but for several reasons, we're not going to use that one.
That computer is nice, but it has 3 big problems with it. First, it is not silent. At least one of the case fans has a nasty rattle in it, and we need to swap those out to make it silent. Second, it is very hot running as the MSI case has terrible airflow, forcing the fans to turn more than they should. Third, it is big, heavy, and a pain to move around. And we just don't need that to be a monster build.
I was perfectly happy with my old machine except for 2 things. First, Tech took out the lovely Ryzen 7 3700X out of it and put in a Ryzen 7 1700X in its place. Second, the boot SSD was a terrible ADATA SX6000D RAM-less drive that ran very slowly when I tried to write more than a small amount of data to it.
Those are all fair points. The 1700X was awesome when it came out, but going backwards from a 3700X to a 1700X, well, it's frankly pretty dreadful. But let's back up a second. Let me explain how this ended up with a 3700X in the first place, because it was built with a 2600X way back in April of 2019. This PC was never built for any specific purpose other than making a video on YouTube. Now, I used it for multiple videos. Links to those will be in the video description below. And if you want to see the build and the benchmarks that will run on this, then go check those out. But beyond that, it mostly just sat in the corner, sad and unused, as one of the many projects of the channel. Then at some point, Rogue needed a PC at a desk in the office. This was there in the corner, so I decided to use it for her. Now at that time, I swapped out the 2600X for a 2700 non-X because I needed the 2600X for benchmarking. You'll hear that repeatedly. And then the 2700 was on the shelf not being used, so I put it in this machine. I also upgraded the RAM at that time from 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes because, well, to be very blunt and honest, we don't use computers with 16 gigabytes of RAM anymore in actively used machines. The improvement in Windows in a multitasking environment is too great to even try using 16 gigabytes of RAM, at least today.
That is so true. Even at home on 2 monitors, I need 32 gigabytes of RAM to not feel the sluggishness of Windows while trying to play my Shooty Boats game and watch Twitch on a second monitor. Once, my husband borrowed 16 gigabytes of RAM out of my home PC, and I sat down to use it, and it was like, what the heck happened to my PC? I mean, seriously, it was noticeable without benchmarking. It was obvious that something was wrong. So Tech, here's this. Tech!
I'm sorry, love.
Tech starts running. Get back here. Let's take a walk.
So yeah, 32 gigabytes it is. I probably also swapped out SSDs and GPUs at that point, but to be honest, I can't remember what GPU might have gone in there, and it doesn't really matter at this point, to be fair. Now, at some point after that, I needed the Ryzen 7 2700 for benchmarking. Where have we heard of that before? We generally only have one of each CPU, and so that tends to happen.
Oh yeah, this is the point where we updated the BIOS to support Zen 2. That was an adventure. That took all afternoon.
True, but we did update 2 machines at the same time. Your home PC, which at the time had a Gigabyte X370 Gaming K7, and this one with the MSI X470 Gaming Plus. Both were a pain, but the X370 bricked and had to be BIOS flashbacked twice and took many hours to sort out. The X470 at least only took an hour or two and mostly worked right the first-ish time. At that point, about 9 months ago, we put a Ryzen 7 3700X on both motherboards. Your home machine and this one here, which you loved because Zen 2 is a huge improvement over Zen Plus. All was fine for a few months until I needed a 3700X because while we did have 2 of them, you had both.
What can I say? It's an awesome CPU, and you gave it to me to use, then you took it back and downgraded me to Zen 1 of all things. You made it worse than what it started out. I took care of that tech guy for you.
Yeah, well, I had an extra 1700X on the shelf, and it was an easy enough swap. This is one problem with having limited parts. However, in retrospect, I should have bought another 3700X and left your machine alone. Happy wife, happy life. That being said, doing so wouldn't have fixed your other issue, the SSD.
No kidding. And for those of you at home wondering, DRAM-less SSDs are fine for read performance, but terrible if you need to update your games, if you need to update Windows, or anything else that writes data. Buy a proper SSD and save your sanity.
So yeah, about the SSD. AData makes solid SSDs in general, at least at the higher end. We love the SU800, which is a premium SATA SSD with SLC cache and DRAM buffer, and the SX8100 and 8200 Pro, which are premium NVMe SSDs with SLC cache and DRAM buffers. The SU600 series, most of the 700 series are low-end DRAM-less drives that are just not worth considering at this point. Likewise, the SX6000 series are DRAM-less NVMe drives that benchmark well but have poor real-world performance. Now, they did make some sense 2 years ago when the price gap was larger, but today it's trivial. Don't buy a DRAM-less SSD if you value your sanity.
So today we finally took out the Ryzen 7 1700X and we replaced it with the Ryzen 9 3900X because that CPU is amazing and feels like a whole new computing experience over the 1700X.
The difference is obvious right at the Windows desktop. No benchmarks required. Installing programs and games, running updates, and even just rebooting the computer is clearly faster. We also installed a 1TB SX8200 Pro NVMe Premium SSD as the new boot drive and gave the machine a fresh install of Windows 10. When running multiple game installers, Windows Update, syncing your OneDrive, and more, it's like a whole new computer. Friends don't let friends use low-end SSDs.
Indeed, this PC now feels like a sports car ready to run anything that I care to throw at it, including live streaming, video editing, gaming, and more. This will actually be my new Twitch streaming PC at the office and my work machine rolled all into one.
We also updated the BIOS to the newest version. It was 2 versions out of date. That went smoothly. Then we replaced the Wraith Prism RGB stock cooler with the Cooler Master Hyper 212 Evo LED edition. Now, the Wraith Prism RGB never actually came with the 1700X or the 2600X this was built with. That was just a cooler we had in the office and used because it was quick and easy to install a year ago.
Yeah, but this thing is loud. I mean, it's not too bad when you're just sitting at the Windows desktop, but if you actually try and use your computer, it spins up and it makes too much noise for me.
The Hyper 212 Evo is a nice cooler, but it's on the budget side of things. It does get loud at stock fan speeds under full load on the Ryzen 9. However, adjusting the fan curve in either the BIOS or MSI's Dragon software fixes that right up. Now we're going to show you some footage recorded from the PC under load from a camera 3 feet or 1 meter away with the side panel removed. This first clip is with Ada64 stress testing the CPU only. That really is very quiet. Now keep in mind that I have the fan curves adjusted to slow the case fans to 600 RPM and the CPU fan to 800 RPM. Now we'll show you the full CPU, FPU, cache, and memory stress test under a much higher load. That's louder to be sure. The case fans didn't change their speed, but the CPU fan spins up to more than 1200 RPM, sometimes hitting 1400 RPM, which is audible. I wouldn't really want to use the 212 Evo on a serious content creation machine. It's just not enough cooler to maintain quiet performance under extended renders. But it is just fine for a gaming PC that won't go to 100% CPU usage. We have one more to show you. Now, honestly, this really isn't about this upgrade so much as it makes a point that one loud part defeats the rest of your efforts for a quiet PC. This is adding the GPU to the stress test. To be honest, none of those were really loud, but with everything on, it was a bit noisier than idle. Now, in fairness, this is on the desk turned to the side with the cover off, so it's not really fair to the PC either.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now I just have to talk tech into installing 4 Be Quiet fans in there for me, because I prefer it to be completely silent. Silence!
Fair enough, but this has a fairly low-end power supply unit, so if we did that, the fan on the PSU would be the noisy part. So in conclusion, what's the point of this video? Partly to give you all an update on an older build, which we haven't done as often as I'd like in general. Partly to talk about the benefits of upgrading a Ryzen build from earlier in AM4's life to something much better. Partly to discuss the benefits of doing so and to show how far a PC can go. Having said all that, let me leave you with these thoughts. First, installing Zen 2 on 300 and 400 series boards can be hit and miss. We've had good luck with it sometimes and poor luck in others. We bought 2 new B550 boards because we're not going to do that again. It is not worth the trouble in retrospect.
If it works for you, great. But what if it doesn't? What if you get random crashes, blue screens, or even a bricked board? I mean, do you even have any spare parts to get it back up and running? I mean, it's not a big deal for us because we have enough computer parts that these problems are just merely annoyances and not critical faults. I actually encourage tech to buy these new motherboards and just replace the older 300 and 400 series boards rather than continue to upgrade any more AM4 systems because quite frankly, I don't want to sit there for 4 hours arguing with a PC that just doesn't want to update or just has random problems show up.
Just to be absolutely clear, I'm not going to replace this MSI X470. It's working, it's running, it's fine, we've had no issues. We have two systems at home with B350 boards. One is an Asus Prime, the other is a B350 Tomahawk, an otherwise good board, and both of those have Ryzen 7 1700s on them. We are planning on upgrading them to Zen 2, and we are not going to even attempt that on any more 300 series boards, which is where these two are going. We also wanted to replace the stock cooler here because as pretty as the Wraith Prism RGB cooler really is, it's just too loud. The Hyper 212 Evo is a compromise. A bigger cooler really would be better. But we had an extra one and this whole PC is a compromise to begin with, so there it is. BackBlaze is the leader in online backup services. Back up everything on your computer, including external USB hard drives, for just $6 per month with no limits. No file size limits, no backup size limits, no throttling, multi-threaded upload support, multiple security options including two-factor authentication, and private encryption keys are available. Rapid restores with file downloads, plus the option to have your data shipped to you via FedEx on a USB hard drive. File versioning support keeps multiple copies of files as you change them. It is a true backup solution to allow recovery of older files or accidentally deleted files with the option to keep locally deleted files in your backup forever. Sign up for a free 2-week trial using our link in the video description below. No credit card is required. Give it a try to test your backup speed. Do a test restore. Make sure you're happy with it before you pay anything. We have been paying customers of BackBlaze for 9 years, long before we had a YouTube channel, and we highly recommend it. Thank you all so much for watching this very long update video. 2 gold stars for all of you for hanging out with Tech and
Rogue.
Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you love it. Remember, subscribe to the channel with the big huge red button directly below. Questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, suggestions. I think you all know where the comment section is at this point, and if you don't, where have you been? YouTube's been around for a little while. Links in the video description below to the previous videos on this build and a variety of other things, and of course to Amazon, Newegg, eBay, and all that stuff. Use those while shopping to support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you guys next time.